So some of you may not necessarily understand the process of how we decide what talks are in which spaces and all of that kind of thing. So what we do is we combine talks into groups of 3 that we think are on similar subjects and similar topics, and then put them to a vote. So hopefully many of you will have voted, and we then program them based on that. And that's different from how we used to do it, and it's how most conferences do it, where they just choose. And it's brilliant because it allows us, we've got 3 debut Brighton SEO speakers in this session on the main stage, and I'm very excited about that. I'm particularly looking forward to this next talk. We've got Steph. She's going to be talking about how to SEO forums, user-generated content, and all of that sort of stuff. So we give her a very warm welcome.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming along. There's quite a lot of people here. That's scary. Cool, so I'm not going to talk too much at the start because, full disclosure, I actually had to cull 30% of the content of this presentation. So yeah, I will be sharing a link at the end which includes a lot more information than I was able to cover in just 20 minutes. So who am I? My name is Steph Whatley. I'm an SEO manager at the UK's largest pure play SEO consultancy. This is my sexy team here. I think everyone's there, but if not, sorry guys, you are also sexy. Cool. So why am I going to talk about forums today? So forums are, I think, a little bit of a sadly under-covered topic in SEO. They can actually give you increased SERP visibility. So what I mean by that are like topical or trending terms. It could be semantic variations. All those kind of longer tail queries that your customers are talking about or your target market are talking about that you don't actually have time to write content for. So that can lead to more traffic. It can also keep people on site for longer, which leads to more money. So that's why we're all here, let's face it. One little thing before we go any further, please, and this is the same for any enterprise website, use logical, consistent URL paths, because if you don't, your life is going to be hell when it comes to managing forums. So you're welcome, pay it forward. So at Blue Array, we've managed a few forums. They're pretty big. This one is just a crude site search. It's about 1 million indexable pages in Google. 2 of the biggest ones that we manage focus on lifestyle and health, which means that we got walloped by 2 huge core updates. Yeah. So we had the Medic update last summer, and we had the update in March this year, which seemed to focus more on your money, your life type subjects. So great. We've got a massive website. We've got an algorithmic penalty. Everything's going well. So that's not me burying my head in the water. That is actually a deep dive into why the hell we got it. The main areas tended to focus on 3 main camps. So we had duplication, we had crawling, and we had trust. So 3 huge areas. So starting with duplication, unfortunate fact, people are quite lazy. When you invite people to create content on your website, they don't really care about doing the best job for you. They don't really search very much. They're not very accurate with their thread titles or descriptions. They're also selfish. Sorry, but yeah, they are. Instead of tagging onto an existing thread, what they'll do is they'll start a new one just so they can talk about themselves. And they don't really get why it's an issue. They don't really understand the problem with duplication and the sort of impact of that. So just some examples of some really contextual, insightful thread topics that I found. Obviously, Google knows exactly which queries to serve these pages to. Great. So how the hell do we tackle this as webmasters and SEOs? So the first one is to implement some rules. Take back control with a cute dog, but also with some meta title rules. So you could do this in a few ways. The first one is to impose a minimum character limit for your users. Don't let them hit that subscribe button. I watch too much YouTube. Don't let them submit their post until they've met a certain minimum character limit. You can also prompt them, so as they're typing, if there's something that already exists that's kind of hitting those main keywords. If you have the functionality, you could also sort of propose, would you like to post in this instead of creating more and more content? If you've got existing threads, if you want to manage this a bit better, you could actually bring in some of the body content from the actual post itself to make it a little bit more contextual and descriptive. So here's an example. I made this up at Cheese Champs. Sounds good, right? If anyone wants to create a website called Cheese Champs, do let me know. So say my title was cheese, really insightful, really helpful. And the part of my post was just, I'm looking for a place to buy brie near Brighton. which I am, so please do tweet me if you know of anywhere good. If I was to use some of my rules that I just mentioned, if I use a minimum character limit, I might make it a bit longer, a bit more insightful, give a bit more information to Google. Or I could auto-populate it with the post content, in which case I've got all of this great, sexy information now. Google's probably going to understand exactly my local intent, it's going to understand my general intent about cheese, and it's going to serve the best results. The next thing is UX, so helping users find things. Forums can be pretty massive. It's quite hard to navigate around them for both crawlers and bots. But from this perspective, if you're designing a website well, you're creating good, strong information architecture, you're using really relevant section names that appeal to the understanding of your audience, they're going to find stuff easier, and they might not create so many duplicate threads. And you can also, if you have the functionality, encourage people to use internal search, get them looking for things, get them finding things, rather than just creating loads of extra stuff. The next section is crawling. So this was my biggest section that I had to cull, ironically. So let's get into it. The website that I mentioned earlier with about 1 million pages indexed in Google, it's pretty big. We had a look at it on Search Console to see just how frequently it was getting crawled. And on a good day, it's about half of the pages. On an average day, around a quarter. And on a really bad day, around 7 to 8%. So not so great for a huge website. And a lot of these issues are not just for forums, they're just for enterprise websites in general. We know that it can take absolutely ages to crawl them. Just ourselves, it can take up to 5 days in the cloud trying to crawl one of these things. And we know that Google is not going to hang around for that. It's not a great situation. And the ironic thing about user-generated content is that it has the potential to grow exponentially. You are not in control of how many pages are on your website, ironically. So there's a few ways to deal with this. The first one is you could do some log file analysis. We normally recommend a minimum of 2 weeks. You can look for common sections and themes. Again, this is going to be a lot easier if you've got some consistent URL paths or strings that you can actually segment and search for. And then on a similar vein, sitemap analysis, if you've got a huge website, if you've got lots of sections on your forum, try splitting out into different individual sitemaps and use a sitemap index to make it easier. You can then locate some issues in specific sections and debug those a little bit quicker. The next thing to talk about is content craft, unfortunately. So real quick disclaimer, don't delete anything that's got valuable backlinks pointing at it. I know we all know this, but it's worth mentioning just for posterity. So with a huge amount of content, like on a forum, there's a few ways that you can kind of work with this at scale. You can set some benchmarks. So you can base it on a few factors. You could base it on freshness. So how recent is the thread? Is it something that was created in the last 3 months, or was it actually 13 years ago, which we have seen? You can also check engagement. So is it popular? Is it just like a dying swan? Does it need to be just culled? Is it spam-worthy? You'll know this better than anyone else if you're managing a large website. You know the kind of topics that your customers are going to be talking about. If it's something that's like diet pills, you're going to get a lot of spam there, so watch out for that. So you can actually do a search with some keywords that you think might be targeting kind of spam comments. And also think about relevance. It might be something from like 4 years ago. It could be like the Queen's Diamond Jubilee ITV coverage. No one's looking for that anymore. Why are we keeping it crawlable? Probably no point. The other thing you can do is you can have a look at search volume. So look at the kind of head keywords for each of the threads and see just how valuable they are in terms of search opportunity. And then, real quick one, if it's really low value content like parameterized pages or internal search pages, or maybe even profile pages of people that haven't logged on for like 4 years, get rid of them. So dealing with craft then, just really briefly, there's a few ways to do it, which I'm sure you're all familiar with already. The first one is to just kill it. Just get rid of it. It's not valuable. No one needs it anymore. No one's looking for it. Get rid. Second one is to block it in robots.txt. Again, going to be easier if you're using consistent URL paths. If you take one thing away today, it's got to be that. And the other thing you can do is wall it. So make it uncrawlable by blocking Google and other crawlers from getting to it. You can also think about internal linking. Something we've seen on quite a few forums is that people overpaginate. So every sort of 3 or 4 posts, they'll create a new page. And there's just no need for that at all, especially on a popular thread. So try and keep it to around 20 to 30 posts by the time you create a new paginated URL. You can also look at HTML sitemaps and modules. So you've probably seen some of these modules on forums yourself. So things like popular posts, trending, related, but you probably just pass straight through them, but they serve a really good purpose. And that is to direct both crawlers and traffic from one part of the website to another. HTML sitemaps, again, a little bit underused. We've seen some really good examples of people creating them. They're linked from the footer, and it's a really good way to kind of unearth some of those deeper areas of the website. So here's an example. Digital Spy, my favorite lunchtime read. Shout if you like Digital Spy. Nobody. Just me. Okay, she stands alone. Fine. So this is their HTML sitemap. You can see it's really nicely laid out. It shows a good, clear hierarchy. And it makes it easier because it's linked from the footer, so crawlers can access all parts of that website from pretty much any page. This is something from NetMums, so quite a big forum. What they've done is they've taken some of their most valuable threads, categorized them by subsection, and actually linked them from the footer in a kind of like thread sitemap. That's another really good way to do it, especially if you've got some threads that you want to be heavily promoting, those really big opportunity kind of keyword threads. That's a consideration. And then these are just the modules that I talked about. Slot these into your wireframes, and that will kind of do quite a lot of the work for you. It involves a little bit of trickiness, setting up sort of the algorithms at the start, but it's a really good idea, and it's very low effort. The other thing you can do is connect from sort of blog or static content over to relevant threads, and vice versa. Funnel that backlink equity back and forth, and you'll be onto a winner. Quick tangent before I carry on. Content ideation. So forums are a huge, unmined area of content. Your customers, if they're talking about things that are relevant to them, it could be about your products, or it could just be about just general events in life, if it's kind of a lifestyle area. If they're talking about those, why aren't you just creating some awesome content? Because if you write something really well, really in-depth, really reputable, that's going to rank really well and a lot better than any kind of like poxy, low-value thread that no one looks at after 2 weeks. So make sure that you're doing that. And just a real quick example, if you're like me and you just like Disney, even though you're an adult, you'll know that 2 new worlds have opened up at Disney this year in both California and Orlando. And it's Galaxy's Edge, Star Wars themed. And these are just some of the threads that people are talking about. So they're talking about reservations, they're talking about wait times, talking about merchandise, all of these things. You can just take those and write some really good content based on what people are saying. You can actually just take their word for it. You don't even need to do a huge amount of research on the matter. And the last section is trust. So trust is really important in most relationships and our relationship with Google. Google webmasters actually say that low quality content on some parts of your website can lower the whole site's rankings. Dude, that is not cool. Do not do that. Essentially what we can take from this is that poor quality leads to poor trust, which leads to poor rankings. It's not what we want. So based on our experience of Google so far, the penalties we've been hit with, and the kind of general discussion in the industry, there's kind of 3 main areas that we think Google probably sort of extract trust ratings from. And it's a bit of a nebulous term, it's a bit subjective, but these are kind of the 3 front runners. So the first one is the link graph, so who we're related to and how on the web. There's also content quality, so is our content well written? Is it riddled with typos? Are there loads of issues with it? And the third one is site hygiene. So are crawlers encountering a lot of 404s? Are they running into weird canonicals? Things like that can kind of send a signal to Google that if you're not maintaining your website properly, why should it trust you? You're obviously not that bothered. So one of the ways you can do this is to employ moderators, which sounds common sense, but they do quite a few things for you. So they're the gatekeepers of quality and standards on your website. They keep things relevant and on topic. They can close duplicate threads, see earlier. And they can also ban trolls and spammers, which is a very nice thing to have on a forum because people are awful. Thinking a bit more about links, so make sure that you review your linking domains and disavow regularly. This is not something that you can just do once every 2 years with a huge website, especially one that's got lots of users coming and going. It's the kind of thing you want to schedule in and resource properly in a workflow. Blanket rel no follow UGC links. So all this week I was like I really hope they don't come up with any weird announcements this week. Yeah. So thanks, Google. So I'm not going to go into a huge amount of depth on this because mainly I don't understand it yet. But you could use real UGC as well. That's an option. Don't forget that as of next year, it's going to be considered a hint, not a directive. So something to keep in mind there. And the other thing you can think about when it comes to trust is expertise. So use verifiable citations for content, especially if you're dealing with things like health or something scientific or political. You want to make sure that you're linking out to really, really reputable sources. So here's an example from Healthline. They've just used like a pretty old school citation kind of visual, but it works. They're linking through to PubMed Central, which sounds like Club Med, and I've literally just, that's connected in my brain. But yeah, they're linking through to those. Google's picking up on those signals, how everything's connected across the web, and it knows that PubMed is a good place of information. You can also encourage expert users through gamification, through point systems and things like that. We know that mods do this really well. Note the removal of nofollow from your profile and your own custom URL, not bad. And even Facebook are getting on board with this. Obviously, slightly desperate now for various PR reasons, but yeah, something they're doing is giving people badges and awards for actually contributing to things. You can also make more of your expert users thinking more about if they are a leader in their industry, if they're well known in the field in which they're talking. Linking through to other places on the internet where they appear in a credible way can actually send a lot of signals to Google about how expert your users are. We know that Google is moving much more towards an entity-based approach rather than looking at references in isolation. It's trying to work out a huge web, a huge picture of who is who on the internet, and that will help. You can also make them moderators. They're probably the best people to know what's crap and what's not, because they're an expert. And if you've got something that's really high value, so a really high value, like your money, your life section of a forum, you can also ring fence it so that it's only for experts. And you can really kind of stronghold that expertise and not let anyone, like a spammer, ruin it for you. Here's an example from examine.com. They were kind of in the news quite a lot, well, Twitter news, a couple of months ago, talking about their sort of sad decline recently. But they do it really well. So they've got author pages for their expert users and for people that are writing sort of reputable content. It links through to Wikipedia. That might be going a little south soon, but we'll return to that next year. It also links through to LinkedIn, so you can see their professional history and their credentials. And it also links to other papers that they've done, so things from .gov.edu sites, which again kind of lend a lot of credibility to that particular person. So one more thing, because I've got 3 minutes left, which I'm actually impressed with, because this is run over every time. Just to stuff in, this doesn't actually fit in one of those 3 buckets, but it's really, really important, so I want to say it anyway. Check your mobile usability if you're managing a forum. So depending on the forum itself, we found that most of the time, everyone goes on their mobile. And that makes sense, right? They want a quick answer to something, or they want to see what someone thinks about the latest episode of Luther, you know, whatever. They're probably going to do it sat on the sofa. They're not going to log on to the desktop to search for it. So what you want to be thinking about here is making sure that your page speed is good, making sure you don't have any intrusive interstitials, and making the bot and the user experience as positive as possible, generally. There are some exceptions to this. So if you're thinking about like Stack Overflow, generally, people will be on a desktop because they're having a crisis at work, like myself. So people will be logging on there rather than on mobile. So it's really important to keep your audience in mind. Final thoughts then, and this won't make any sense to you if you're like a baby millennial, but yeah, Jerry Springer used to love that. And he used to do a final thought at the end. So, going back to my unfortunate decline on my forum. So did it pay off? Kinda. We started working with them around sort of September last year. Everything was going great. Obviously, we had a seasonal dip at Christmas. Got hit by Your Money, Your Life. And then pretty much going up since then. Sort of around June, we started to see like a slight increase, which is good. But as we all know, SEO isn't like a story with an ending. We go like this. We are not in control. But so far, it seems to be going well. So that's nice and reassuring for both me and the client. This link does not work. Sorry about that, site hygiene. So I will tweet out a link after this. So just make sure that you get my Twitter handle there, and I promise I will tweet it out. It has a lot more information in it than I was able to share today, so it really is worth actually having a look. I'm also going to share everything on SlideShare. But again, you won't get that kind of context and explanation around everything because my slides are kind of pants. And also check out Blue Array because we're always hiring for amazing, sexy SEOs like you guys. So thank you very much. Have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Steph.